Reed Richards felt the math slip, not the kind of slip that came from a wrong number. This was worse. This was a rule breaking. 1 second, the lab was clean and quiet, light steady, screens full of graphs. Sue was behind the safety glass, arms folded, watching him with that calm look that always meant, "Be careful, Reed." Ben was leaning on a support beam like it was nothing. Johnny was bouncing on his heels, bored in the way only Johnny could be bored, when something interesting was about to happen. Reed had done this 100 times in smaller ways. He had mapped strange energy, opened tiny windows, measured what was on the other side. He thought he understood the edge of it. Then the numbers on the main screen spiked. A low sound filled the room. Not a blast, not a scream. A deep, steady hum that made the glass tremble. Sue's eyes narrowed. "Reed." "I see it," Reed said fast. His hands moved over the controls. "It's not supposed to widen." The air in front of the device folded inward, like a curtain being pulled too hard. The window became a hole. The hole became a mouth. Johnny took 1 step back. "Okay, that's new." Ben pushed off the beam. "Tell me you got this, Stretch." Reed opened his mouth to say yes. The floor dropped out from under him. Gravity didn't just pull, it grabbed. Reed's body stretched on instinct, arms shooting out toward the console to anchor himself, but the console tore free like it weighed nothing. A wrench spun past his face. Papers exploded into the air like white birds. Sue's force field snapped into place around them without her even thinking about it. A clear bubble, tight and perfect. It kept the shrapnel out. It didn't stop the pull. "Hold on," Sue said. Ben wrapped one arm around Johnny's chest like a seatbelt. Johnny's hands flared with fire, trying to push back with thrust, but the pull ate the flame like it was air. Reed reached for Sue, and the world flipped inside out. For a heartbeat, there was no sound. No up. No down. Just pressure and light, and a sense that reality was being turned like a page. Then the bubble burst into open sky. They fell. Wind screamed past Reed's ears. The bright sun hit his eyes. Below, a city stretched out in hard lines and tall glass. A river cut through it like a silver ribbon. And right beneath them, packed tight like ants around sugar, was a huge crowd. Giant screens, spotlights, red carpets, a stage with a shining logo on it. Vought. Reed barely had time to register the word on the banners before Sue moved again. Her hands spread. Her face went sharp with focus. A wide force field bloomed under them like a clear platform. It caught their fall with a smooth, controlled stop that made Reed's stomach lurch but kept their bones intact. They hovered 20 feet above a screaming crowd. Phones shot up everywhere. People pointed. People cheered. People ran. On the stage below, a man in a perfect suit stared up with his mouth open. A woman with a headset shouted into a mic, her voice thin with panic even from this height. Johnny looked down, and, for half a second, did what Johnny always did when eyes were on him. He smiled. Then something exploded on the edge of the crowd. A rig light snapped loose. Metal screamed as it fell toward a cluster of people at the barricade. Ben didn't wait. He stepped off Sue's platform like it was solid ground. He dropped like a rock. He hit the street with a crack that spidered the pavement. The impact would have hurt a normal man. Ben wasn't normal. He caught the falling rig in both hands, arms flexing like cables, and threw it sideways into an empty space with a grunt. "Move!" he bellowed, voice huge. "Get back!" Some people listened because of the sound alone. Others froze because fear did that to them. Reed stretched without thinking. His torso elongated as his arms shot out in 2 directions at once. He hooked a tipping barricade, pulled it upright, and then grabbed 2 people by their jackets and yanked them back from the crush. Sue dropped her platform lower, shielding the front rows like a clear wall. The panic wave hit her field and stopped. People bounced back like they'd run into an invisible door. Johnny took off into the air, flame roaring around him. He didn't blast heat down at the crowd. He angled up and away, keeping it controlled. Reed tracked him with his eyes. Johnny's control was good, better than most people realized. Then the sky darkened with a shadow that wasn't a cloud. Something descended with casual speed, like gravity obeyed him more than anyone else. A man in a cape, hovering above the crowd, smiling like he was on camera because he was on camera. Homelander. The crowd's noise shifted. Not just cheers. Something tighter. Something worshipful. Something scared. Homelander looked at Ben's rocky body, at Johnny's flame, at Sue's calm face behind a shimmering barrier, at Reed's stretched arms, still holding people like he was made of rubber. His smile didn't change. His eyes did. "Wow," he said, voice warm and friendly, like a host greeting surprise guests. "This is fun." Sue's shield stayed up. Her voice was steady. "People are hurt. Back off." Homelander tilted his head. "That's adorable." He dropped lower, close enough that Reed could see the clean, perfect pores on his face, the small lines around his eyes that came from smiling too much for too long. Homelander's gaze flicked to the Vought banners, then back to them, like he was putting pieces together and not liking what he saw. "This is my city," he said, still smiling. Then, very softly, like the camera microphones would have to lean in to catch it, he asked, "Who approved you?" Reed felt Sue's field tighten, felt Ben's body shift into a fighting stance, felt Johnny's flame flare brighter without him meaning to. And Reed, staring at the Vought logo, understood the real problem. They hadn't fallen into a hero world. They had fallen into a brand. Reed got them off the street before the situation could harden into something worse. He didn't do it with strength. He did it with timing. Sue widened her field into a dome over the nearest civilians, making a safe pocket that cut down the panic. Johnny flew a tight circle above the crowd, not as a show, but as a warning line between falling debris and human heads. Ben moved like a bulldozer with a conscience, shoving broken metal aside and lifting a crushed camera tower off 2 trembling crew members. Reed watched Homelander's eyes. Homelander was acting calm. He was also watching for weakness the way a shark watched for blood. Reed stretched one arm back and lightly tapped Sue's shoulder. "We leave," he said, low. "Now." Sue didn't argue. That told Reed she felt it too. She lifted them again with a force field platform, smooth and fast, carrying Ben and Reed and Johnny up and over the stage like they weighed nothing. Cameras followed. People screamed questions. Homelander rose after them at a lazy pace, like he was letting them go because he was generous, not because he was measuring them. Reed leaned forward, looking for a path, rooftops, alley gaps, a place out of sight. They landed 3 blocks away on the roof of a parking structure. No crowd, no spotlights, just heat rising off concrete and the distant wail of sirens. Sue dropped the shield and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a minute straight. Johnny sat down with a grin that tried to pretend this was cool. "Okay." That was a lot. Ben stared out at the skyline, jaw tight. "That guy in the cape, I don't like him." Reed was already pulling bits of scrap from his suit pocket. Wires, a small circuit board, a chunk of something that had flown through the lab with them. He laid it out like puzzle pieces. Sue stepped closer, voice quiet. "Reed, where are we?" Reed looked at the Vought tower in the distance. It was tall and clean and proud, like it owned the sky. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I know that name." He tapped the logo he'd seen on the banners. "Vought. That's not one of ours." Johnny's eyebrows lifted. "So, not New York?" Ben snorted. No kidding. Reed ignored the joke because his brain was moving fast. He pulled a bent phone from a pocket. It wasn't his. It was a crew member's phone that had flown near him in the chaos and stuck to his stretched hand. He hadn't meant to take it. He also wasn't going to waste it. The screen was cracked but on. He swiped. A news app was already playing a live clip. Their faces, blurry, shaky, shot from below, were on every channel. A headline crawled across the bottom. Unregistered Soup's attack Vought event. Sue's eyes hardened. We saved people. I know, Reed said. Johnny leaned in. They're calling us attackers. Ben's hands clenched. I saved 2 guys from getting crushed by a tower. I should have let it fall on whoever wrote that. Sue put a hand on Ben's arm. It was small next to his rocky forearm, but it mattered. Ben's shoulders dropped a little. Reed kept scrolling. A second clip showed Homelander smiling at the camera, standing tall, cape perfect. With the stage behind him, his lips moved in slow motion, but the caption filled in the lie cleanly. We contained the threat. Reed felt a cold line form down his spine. This is a controlled narrative, he said. They're shaping what the world thinks in real time. Johnny made a face. Like PR? Like control, Sue said, sharper. Reed breathed once. We need information. We need a quiet place. We need power, a connection, basic tools. Ben looked around at the roof. We got concrete and pigeons. Reed's gaze went to the street level, to the movement, to the way black SUVs were already flowing like blood cells toward the area they'd come from. They're coming, Reed said. They moved. Reed led them through rooftops and fire escapes, staying above eye level when possible, dropping down only when they had to. He stretched across a gap between buildings and anchored a makeshift rope for Ben to cross without crashing through somebody's apartment. Sue kept a thin, invisible shield around them whenever they passed cameras, bending light and attention without making it obvious. Johnny wanted to fly high and scout. Sue gave him one look. Not yet. He obeyed. Mostly. They found an old service entrance behind a closed office building, a locked door, a security camera. Reed stretched one finger thin, slid it into the keypad housing, and shorted the wires with a careful touch. The door clicked open. Inside, it smelled like dust and stale coffee. They picked a small maintenance room in the basement. Concrete walls, no windows, a single humming vent. Reed sat on the floor and started building a mini-lab the way other people built a campfire. He scavenged a computer tower from a storage closet, a broken printer, a spare battery, wire from a tool cart. He worked fast and quiet. His hands moved with purpose. Sue watched the hallway, her force field ready but invisible, like a second skin over the space. Ben leaned against the wall, arms crossed. We should have stayed and showed that cape guy what's what. Sue's voice was soft but firm. And then what? Punch him until he stops? In front of a crowd? In front of cameras? In a world we don't understand? Ben's mouth opened, then closed. He looked away. I know. I'm just tired of bullies. Johnny sat on an overturned bucket, bouncing his knee. I hate that they filmed us. I hate that I can't just... His hands flared with heat. Then he forced them to cool. I don't know. Fix it. Reed didn't look up from the wires. We fix it by understanding it. Sue stepped closer to Reed. Tell me what happened. Reed paused. That was Sue. She didn't ask what he was doing. She asked what was inside him. He swallowed. I pushed the edge too far, he said. The window widened. The energy didn't just connect. It grabbed. It pulled us through. Johnny made a sound like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to say it wasn't Reed's fault. Ben said it for him. You didn't do it to hurt anyone, Stretch. Reed nodded once, accepting the kindness but not letting it erase the truth. I need to find the same energy signature here. The weak spot. If it still exists, it might reopen. That could be our way back. Or it could bring something else through. Sue's face tightened. Something else like what? Reed remembered the feeling of the hole being a mouth. Anything, he said honestly. A sound came from above. Not footsteps. A distant thump. Then another. Sue held up a hand. Everyone went still. The thump stopped. Silence returned. Reed's makeshift screen flickered to life. He tapped keys. The cracked phone's connection was weak, but it worked. He pulled up local news, public feeds, social posts. And as he watched, he learned the shape of this world. He saw Vaught's name everywhere. He saw the Seven like it was a religion. He saw clip after clip of Soups smiling, posing, fighting with cameras perfectly placed. He also saw the other clips, the ones people tried to bury, the shaky ones, the ones with screams behind the music. Sue leaned over his shoulder. Her eyes narrowed as she read. "They're not heroes," she whispered. Johnny's voice was smaller. "But they look like heroes." Ben's rocky brow lowered. "That's the point." Reed clicked into a deeper article, something half hidden behind paywalls and broken links. He read it anyway, because Reed always read. A name popped up again and again, Homelander. Reed didn't know everything about this world yet, but he knew one thing with growing certainty. That man wasn't just strong, he was the center of the system. A buzzer sound came from the building's front door, a call panel. Then a voice echoed faintly through the hall, amplified by cheap speakers. "Hello," the voice sang, bright and friendly. "We're here to help. Please don't be afraid." Johnny's eyes widened. "They found us?" Sue's posture went still, not tense. "Ready." Reed muted the screen and listened. The voice continued. "We're with Vought. We have food, water, and legal support for you. No one wants a misunderstanding." Ben's lip curled. Legal support. Reed's jaw tightened. "They think they can contract us." Sue's eyes flicked to Reed. "Can we leave?" Reed looked at his half-built device. "We can," he said. "But we should learn what they know first." Johnny stood. "Or we could just scare them." Sue shook her head once. "No threats. Not yet." They moved into positions like they'd done 1,000 times. Reed by the door, stretching his senses through the building's wiring. Sue centered, shielding the room. Ben by the back exit, the wall behind him. Not protection, but an accident waiting to happen if someone pushed him. Johnny near the ceiling vent, ready to burst upward if needed. Reed stretched a thin ribbon of himself under the door and into the hallway. He didn't need to see with eyes. He could feel motion, heat, weight. 3 people stood outside their maintenance room door. 2 were in suits. 1 carried a tablet. The third held a small camera and smiled like this was a commercial. The smiling one spoke again. "We know you're in there. We'd love to talk. We can make this easy." Reed pulled himself back into the room. "PR team," he whispered. "Not soldiers." Ben took a step toward the door. "Let me talk." Sue held out an arm in front of him. "I will." She walked to the door, calm, hands visible. She opened it. The hallway lights buzzed. The Vought reps stood like they were waiting for an autograph. The lead rep smiled wide. "Hi, wow, you're really here? This is incredible." Sue's voice was even. "People were in danger. We helped. That's all." "Of course," the rep said fast, "and everyone is grateful." "Truly." He tapped his tablet and turned it slightly, showing a document full of tiny text. "We just need to get a few things handled. Registration, public safety, image rights. Basic stuff." Johnny blinked. "Image rights?" Ben made a low sound in his throat. "Dangerous." The rep didn't notice. "We also have a place for you to stay. A facility. Medical care. Training. We can even get you a team name people will love. Sue stared at the tablet like it was a weapon. Reed stepped into view, voice polite but cold. May I read it? The rep's smile tightened, but he handed it over. Reed read fast, too fast for the rep to track. His eyes flicked left to right like scanning code. Then he looked up. This is not help, Reed said. This is ownership. The rep laughed lightly, like Reed had made a cute joke. No. It's partnership. Sue shook her head. We don't sign away people's safety so you can sell it. The rep's smile faded a fraction. You're in a new world, he said, still friendly. But his voice had an edge now. Things work differently here. Ben leaned in, his shadow swallowing the rep's shoes. Then your world's busted. The rep swallowed. Okay, he said quickly. Okay. No problem. We can take our time. Just one thing. He lifted the small camera slightly. The lens blinked red. We're recording, he said, for everyone's protection. Sue didn't move. Turn it off. The rep hesitated. Sue raised one hand. A clear bubble formed around the camera, sealing it in a perfect sphere. The image froze as the lens pressed against invisible force. The rep's mouth opened. He tried to pull it back. He couldn't. Sue's voice stayed calm. Turn. It. Off. The rep's finger hit the button fast. Sue released the bubble. The camera dropped into his hands. He almost fumbled it. He backed up half a step, still smiling. But now his eyes had fear in them. Okay, he said. We'll be in touch. He left with his two suit companions, walking faster than they wanted to look. Sue closed the door. Johnny let out a breath. That felt gross. Reed held the tablet, flipping to the last page. They weren't here to negotiate, he said. They were here to establish terms. Ben cracked his knuckles. They can establish these hands. Sue looked at Reed. We need allies, not contracts. Reed nodded slowly. Agreed. As if the universe wanted to answer that, a soft tapping came from the vent above Johnny's head. Johnny looked up. The vent cover shifted, not from inside the building. From someone outside. A face appeared in the gap, eyes wide, hair damp with sweat. A young man. Nervous, trying not to make noise. Huey Campbell dropped into the room like someone who'd climbed too many ladders in his life and hated all of them. He put his hands up fast. Okay, please don't kill me. Behind him, landing with more confidence, came Annie January. Starlight. Her eyes moved over the room, taking in the lab scraps, the tired faces. The way Sue stood between her family and strangers without looking scared. Annie spoke first, voice careful. We're not Vought, she said. And if you don't leave soon, they're going to bring someone worse than paperwork. Ben snorted. Paperwork's already bad enough. Reed looked at Annie, then Huey, then Sue. This was the uneasy bridge he'd hoped might exist. Someone inside the system who still cared. Reed chose his words carefully. Who are you? He asked. Annie's jaw tightened. Someone who's tired of pretending, she said. And from somewhere far above, like thunder behind glass, Reed heard helicopters in the distance. The hunting phase was starting. The first major threat didn't arrive like a monster kicking down a door. It arrived like an appointment. Annie kept her voice low. They will call you terrorists, she said. They will say you attacked Homelander. They will say you're a danger to children. They'll say anything. Huey nodded hard, eyes darting around like he expected cameras to pop out of the walls. And people will believe it, he added. Because they want to. Ben's rocky face twisted. That's insane. Huey gave a small, humorless laugh. Welcome. Reed's mind was already building models. "Where do they move next?" he asked. Annie didn't hesitate. "They'll stage something," she said. "A crisis. A big one. Cameras everywhere. They'll force you to choose between looking bad and letting people die." Sue's hands tightened slightly. "Then we don't let people die." "That's the trap," Huey whispered. "They make it. So no matter what you do, they win." Reed looked at the cracked phone screen again. Live feeds were filling with their blurred faces. Vought anchors were calm, smiling, using words like unregistered and unknown and threat. Then the alert hit. Breaking. Terror attempt on Hudson Skyway. Reed's eyes snapped to the map. A bridge, traffic packed, a bus line running across. Sue read the headline and didn't wait for Reed to speak. "We go," she said. Ben nodded. "Already moving." "Now we're talking." Johnny's flame flickered to life. Then he glanced at Sue, checking. She gave a small nod. Johnny launched upward through a service stairwell, careful not to melt anything. Reed looked at Annie and Huey. "You're coming?" he asked. Annie's face set. "If you go alone, they control the story," she said. "If I'm there, I can at least tell the truth to someone who still listens." Huey swallowed. I'm coming too," he said, like he hated the idea, but couldn't live with himself if he didn't. Ben stared at him. "Kid, you gonna feint on us?" Huey's voice cracked. "Probably," he admitted. "But I can feint later." Reed made a quick decision. "Stay close to Sue," he told them. "Do not run. Do not try to be brave in stupid ways." Huey nodded so hard it looked like his neck might break. They moved across the city fast. Sue carried them on a force field platform just above rooftop level, bending light when they crossed open sight lines. Johnny scouted ahead, a small bright streak against the sky. Ben rode like a boulder on a glass surfboard, grumbling the whole time. The bridge came into view, and Reed immediately saw the staging. Police cars blocked off entrances in a neat line, too neat. News vans were already parked at perfect angles. Helicopters hovered at a safe distance, cameras trained on the center lane like they'd been told exactly where to look. In the middle of the bridge, a fuel truck had jackknifed. A bus was tilted against the guardrail, its back wheels hanging over open air. People were trapped inside, hands pressed to windows, mouths open in silent screams Reed could see even from this distance. Reed's jaw tightened. "They set the pieces," he said. Sue's voice was hard. "Then we moved the pieces." They landed near the bus. The moment their feet hit the bridge surface, the sound hit them. Sirens, shouting, the roar of helicopters, and the cameras. A man in a headset yelled into a mic, "They're here! They're here!" A crowd of onlookers had gathered at the barricades, held back by police who looked more like security than public servants. Reed didn't have time to be angry about that. Not yet. He focused on the bus. The guardrail was bending. Metal shrieked with each small shift. The bus was one bad tremor away from dropping. Sue stepped forward, palms out. A wide force field wrapped around the bus like clear hands. It held the vehicle in place, freezing it mid-tilt. Inside, faces turned toward her. Children. An older woman clutching a purse like it could save her. Sue spoke loud enough for them to read her calm even if they couldn't hear every word. "You're safe," she said. "Stay seated. We're getting you out." Ben moved to the front of the bus and planted his feet. He grabbed the frame, muscles bulging under rock plates, and began to pull it back from the edge. Johnny flew above, flame controlled tight around his body, eyes scanning for secondary dangers. Reed stretched toward the fuel truck. He didn't touch it yet. He looked. Wires, a small device under the cab, not an accident. "Explosive," Reed said. Huey's face went pale. "What?" Reed's voice stayed steady. "It's staged." Annie's eyes narrowed. Of course it is. Then the air shifted. A shadow fell across the bridge. Reed looked up. Homelander hovered above them, cape rippling like it had its own wind machine. He smiled down at the cameras first, then at the people. "My fellow Americans," he called, voice bright and loud. "Please stay calm. The 7 are here." The crowd cheered. Some people cried with relief. Then, like a late guest arriving for applause, A-Train appeared in a blur on the far side of the bridge. Maeve walked in with controlled steps, swordless today, face unreadable. Black Noir stood behind them like a quiet hole in the world. Reed felt the pressure of the scene lock into place. It was a stage. Homelander's gaze dropped to Sue's shield around the bus. His smile sharpened. "Looks like our new friends are already involved," he said. "That's brave." Sue didn't look at him. She didn't give him the attention he craved. She focused on the bus. Ben grunted as he hauled. The bus shifted, inches at a time, back towards safety. Johnny swooped lower. "I'll take the top," he called. "Reed, you got the truck?" Reed stretched an arm toward the explosive device. His fingers became thin, precise tools. He didn't rip it out. He studied the wiring, then pinched the right connection and broke it with a controlled snap. The tiny red light died. Reed exhaled once. "Truck is safe," he said. Homelander's eyes flicked toward the truck, then back. His smile didn't change, but something in his face tightened, like he didn't enjoy surprises. "And who are you supposed to be?" Homelander asked, voice still friendly. Reed ignored him. He turned to Huey. "Help me open the doors," he said. Huey blinked. "Me?" "Yes," Reed said, already stretching to reach the jammed mechanism. "You can pull handles. You can guide people. That matters." Huey swallowed and moved forward, hands shaking. Annie stepped closer to Sue. "You're doing great," she said quietly, like she was talking to someone she trusted, not someone she'd just met. Sue didn't look away from the bus. "So are you," she said. The bus doors popped open. People began to climb out, slow at first, then faster. Sue widened her shield into a corridor, a safe tunnel from the bus to open road. Ben stayed braced, holding the bus steady with raw strength, while Sue's force field took the load. It should have been a clean rescue. Homelander didn't allow clean. He dropped lower, close enough that his voice could reach the trapped crowd and the cameras at the same time. "Careful," he called, pointing down like a helpful lifeguard. "These unregistered soups could lose control at any second," the crowd murmured. Fear slid back in like a tide. Huey looked up at Reed, panic rising. "He's turning them!" "I know," Reed said. Then Homelander's eyes narrowed and the friendly tone thinned. "Hey," he said, just loud enough. "Rock guy." Ben didn't answer. He kept holding. Homelander smiled wider. "You think you're strong?" he said. "That's cute." Ben finally looked up. His voice was a growl. "I'm busy." Homelander's eyes flashed red. 2 thin beams fired down, not at Ben's face, not even at Ben's chest. At the guardrail, at the metal still under strain. He wasn't trying to kill Ben. He was trying to drop the bus. Sue reacted instantly. Her force field thickened, layer on layer, like invisible glass stacking faster than bullets. Homelander's lasers hit her shield and spread across it, contained, redirected upward in a harmless arc into the sky. A roar went up from the crowd. Not cheers, not exactly. Shock. Homelander's smile twitched. For the first time, the cameras caught him looking confused. Sue's voice cut through, clear and sharp. "Stop!" Homelander laughed lightly, like he hadn't just tried to murder a bus full of people. "Relax," he said. "I'm helping." Johnny flared brighter in the air, anger plain on his face. "Helping by trying to drop a bus?" A-Train's head snapped toward Johnny. "Whoa, whoa," he called, grinning for the cameras. "Let's not get heated." Johnny's eyes narrowed. That's not funny. Maeve watched Sue with something like respect and dread mixed together. She didn't move to attack. Not yet. Her eyes said she was calculating. Black Noir said nothing. He shifted slightly, like a blade adjusting in a sheath. Reed made a quick decision. If Homelander wanted a stage, Reed would take the stage away. He stretched upward, body elongating until he was tall enough for people to see him clearly over the rescue corridor. He turned his head toward the nearest news camera and spoke in a calm, even voice. This was staged, Reed said. The anchors on the other end would cut it if they could. The live crowd couldn't unhear it. Reed pointed toward the truck. There was an explosive device under the cab, he said. It was not an accident. A gasp rippled through the onlookers. Homelander's smile sharpened. That's a serious accusation, he said, voice warm like honey over poison. Reed kept going. The police barricades were in place before the crash, he said. The helicopters were already here. The camera angles were already set. Huey stared at Reed like he couldn't believe someone would just say it out loud. Annie's eyes widened, then her mouth tightened with grim satisfaction. She leaned toward a smaller camera crew that wasn't Vought branded and spoke fast. He's right, she said. Ask why Vought had a media team ready. Sue's rescue corridor held steady as the last passengers climbed out. A child stumbled. Sue's field cushioned him like a gentle wall. Ben reached down and steadied the kid with one rocky hand, careful as a father. The bus was empty. Sue's jaw clenched. Ben, she said. Now. Ben pulled. With the passengers gone, he stopped holding back. He hauled the bus fully onto stable road in one hard motion, metal screaming. The guardrail snapped back into place with a loud clang. The crowd erupted, this time in real relief. Homelander's eyes flicked to the now safe bus. His jaw tightened. He had wanted the falling moment, the horror moment, the moment where the four failed on camera. They had denied him that. He dropped lower, close enough that Reed could see the tiny tension in his cheeks, close enough that the helicopters could catch every inch of his face. You're making things up, Homelander said, still smiling. That's what bad guys do. Reed met his eyes. Reed didn't flinch. Reed's voice stayed calm. Then investigate, he said. If you're a hero, you investigate. Homelander's smile held. His eyes did not. For one long second, the whole bridge felt like it was holding its breath. Reed knew what Homelander wanted. He wanted Reed to swing first. He wanted Sue to shove him. He wanted Johnny to blast. He wanted Ben to throw a punch. He wanted a clip. Sue stepped forward and raised a hand, not as a threat, but as a shield between Homelander and the crowd. We're leaving, she said. People are safe. That's the job. Homelander's lips twitched. Oh, he said softly. You don't get to decide the job. He glanced toward the cameras again, resetting his face into something heroic. Then he lifted his voice. Loud, practiced, perfect. The 7 will handle this from here, Homelander announced. These unregistered individuals are to stand down. A-Train took a step forward, shoulders loose, like he was ready to escort them into custody for the cameras. Black Noir shifted, quiet and lethal. Maeve's eyes flicked to Annie for a split second. Annie didn't look back. Reed heard the move before it happened. Not with ears. With pattern. This was the moment they'd be boxed in, surrounded, forced into a fight that would be edited into whatever story Vought wanted. Reed leaned toward Sue. We leave clean, he murmured. Sue nodded. She raised her hands and expanded a dome shield, wide enough to cover their group. Reed, Sue, Ben, Johnny, Annie, Huey. It wasn't opaque. It didn't look like an attack. It looked like a bubble of safety. Homelander's smile widened. Oh, he said, voice dripping fake sweetness. Hiding. Sue didn't answer. She lifted, The bubble rose fast, smooth and straight up, pulling them above the bridge and out of reach of grabbing hands. A-Train blurred forward, trying to run up the side of the shield, but Sue's field became slick and ungrippable, and he slid back with a surprised curse. Johnny, inside the dome, angled his heat downward just enough to create lift without burning the air below. It wasn't needed, but it added speed. They shot upward, then forward, then away. Homelander rose after them. He was fast, faster than most things that flew. Reed watched him close the distance and understood the truth. Homelander could catch them if he chose to, and Sue knew it too. So Sue made the chase a choice. She widened the dome even more, stretching it into a long, curved shield that covered not only them, but the helicopter camera line. Homelander's lasers flickered on. If he fired, he would hit the shield. If he hit the shield, the beam could scatter. If it scattered, it could hit a helicopter. If it hit a helicopter, it would fall. And the whole world would see exactly who Homelander was. Homelander's eyes narrowed. His jaw worked. He didn't fire. He let them go. Not because he couldn't win a fight, because he couldn't risk losing control of the story. As they cleared the river and slipped into the maze of buildings, Huey exhaled like he'd been holding air since birth. Annie stared at Sue with open disbelief. "You just blocked him," she whispered. Sue's voice was tired, but steady. "I blocked a threat," she said. "That's what I do." Ben grunted. "And he didn't like it." Reed looked back once, catching a final glimpse of Homelander hovering above the bridge, tiny in the distance, but still the center of every camera. Reed knew what came next. If Vought couldn't beat them with fists on a stage, it would beat them with law, lies, and pressure. And right on time, Reed's stolen phone buzzed with a news alert. Vought New Soups declared national security risk. Another alert followed. Reward offered for information. Then a third. Legal action filed. Assault on the 7. Johnny let out a sharp laugh that held no humor. "We saved a bus." Huey's voice shook. "That doesn't matter here," he said. "Not to them." Reed stared at the headlines, then at Sue, then at Ben and Johnny. "We will make it matter," Reed said. Sue's eyes stayed on the horizon. "And we do it without becoming them," she replied. Behind them, the city roared with sirens and spinning stories. Ahead of them, the unknown waited. And somewhere inside the tallest tower, people in suits were already writing the next trap. This time with contracts, cameras, and a plan to separate a family that refused to be owned. Huey had seen people fly before. He had seen lasers. He had seen someone laugh while doing something horrible. But watching Sue Storm stand in a bare room with cracked concrete walls and a busted sink, like she was guarding the entire planet with just her posture, that did something to him. It made his chest feel tight. Because she looked like a hero in a way he had almost forgotten was possible. The safe house smelled like old oil and damp wood. There was a couch with springs that stabbed your back. There were 2 cheap lamps. There was a table that looked like it had survived 3 fires and a divorce. This was home for the boys. It was not home for anyone like Reed Richards. Reed had already turned the corner space into a lab. He had the cracked phone taped to the wall with duct tape. He had wires running from a stolen power strip to a half-open computer case. He had a radio scanner made from parts that should not have worked together. Ben Grimm sat on the couch like it was an insult to his body. He was too big for it. The couch looked like it was praying. Johnny Storm paced. He couldn't stop moving. His eyes kept flicking to the tiny window that looked out onto an alley. Sue stayed near the door, quiet, listening to the city through the walls. Butcher walked in with a plastic bag full of takeout menus, a folder, and a look that said he still hadn't decided whether he hated them or needed them. He dropped the folder on the table, It hit like a brick. "Right," Butcher said. "Since we're all playing house, here's your bedtime story." Reed opened the folder. Inside were printed articles, blurry photos, and handwritten notes. Names circled in red ink, lines drawn between them, like a map of madness. Huey recognized the style. It was Butcher's brain on paper. Reed's eyes moved fast. "Homelander," he said. "Yeah," Butcher replied. "The flag-wearing psycho you met. He's not a hero. He's the problem." Sue's gaze stayed steady. "We noticed." Butcher's mouth twitched. "Did you now?" Reed kept reading. His face didn't change much, but Huey saw the small signs, the tightening around the eyes, the way his jaw set. "You have proof?" Reed asked. "Proof?" Butcher scoffed. "Love, in this world, proof is whatever Vought says it is." Johnny stopped pacing. "So we're just stuck?" he asked. "They can just say anything and people believe it?" Huey swallowed. "Most people, yeah," he said. "Because it's easier. Because it's scary to admit the truth." Ben leaned forward. "Then we show them the truth." Butcher laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You think you're the first lot to try?" Sue's voice stayed calm. "No," she said. "But we might be the first who can do it without becoming monsters." Butcher's eyes narrowed, like those words annoyed him more than any threat would have. Reed tapped the folder. "This world has a corporate layer," he said. "A legal layer. A media layer. They'll use all of it." "Correct," Butcher said, "which brings us to the fun part." He reached into his coat and pulled out a stack of papers that looked like they came from a printer that hated humans. He slapped them down. Johnny blinked. "What is that?" "Your welcome basket," Butcher said. "Vaught's lawyers already filed for a court order. They're calling you unregistered hostile soups. They want you in custody, or in a lab, or dead if they can make it look clean." Ben stared at the papers like they were poison. "I ain't signing nothing." Sue didn't even glance at them. "We're not signing anything." Reed picked up the top page and read it. Then the next. Then 10 more, in seconds. Huey watched, stunned. "How are you doing that?" Reed didn't look up. "I'm reading." "That's not reading," Huey muttered. "That's cheating." Johnny leaned over Reed's shoulder. "What's it say?" Reed's mouth flattened. "It says if we cooperate, Vought will provide housing, protection, and public integration. It also says Vought owns any inventions we make here." Sue's eyes sharpened. "They want you." Reed nodded once. "They want my mind and my hands." Butcher leaned in, voice low. "They'll take your wife too if it helps." Sue's force field flickered, so fast it was almost invisible. The air around her tightened. Ben's rocky fists clenched. "Watch your mouth." Butcher didn't back down. "I'm not insulting her. I'm warning you." Reed set the papers down gently, like they were fragile. His voice stayed controlled. "Then we can't let them control the battlefield." Huey looked at the phone on the wall. A news anchor was talking with a calm smile. Under the anchor, a banner crawled. "Vought offers reward for information on dangerous unregistered soups." Another banner popped up. "Stormfront Memorial Hospital on alert after bridge incident." Huey's stomach sank. That hospital name was a knife twist. Vought loved naming places after their own sins. Annie stood near the back, arms crossed, face tight. "They're moving fast," she said. Sue glanced at her. "They always do?" Annie nodded. "They don't wait. They drown the truth before it can breathe." Reed's scanner chirped softly. A small, sharp beep. Reed's head snapped toward it. His hands moved over the device. Numbers rolled. "What is that?" Sue asked. Reed's voice turned quiet. "The same kind of energy we saw in our lab," he said. A weak echo. Ben frowned. Like the hole? Reed nodded. Yes. Johnny's eyes widened. So, it's still here. Reed stared at the numbers like they were a wound. And it's not stable. Huey felt cold. What happens if it breaks again? Reed didn't sugarcoat it. Anything could come through, he said, or it could tear something here apart. Butcher's gaze sharpened. Where is it? Reed checked the signal direction. His finger traced the rough angle. Near the Vought event site, he said. The place we fell into. Annie let out a bitter breath. Of course it is. Sue's face didn't change, but her voice softened. Reed, you're thinking about fixing it. I have to, Reed said. If we leave it, we're risking this entire city. But if you go near Vought, Johnny started. Reed finished for him. They'll be ready. Butcher leaned back, eyes cold. Good. Let 'em be ready. Sue turned toward him. We're not going to war, she said. We're going to protect people. Butcher's smile was thin. Same thing. In this world. The door rattled suddenly. Everyone froze. Sue lifted her hand, and a force field slid into place over the door like a silent lock. Outside, footsteps rushed past, then faded. The city was hunting. Reed looked at Sue. We need a plan that works in daylight and on camera, he said. And a plan that works in the dark. Sue nodded. And we need to keep people safe. Butcher's eyes flicked to Reed. And we need to put Homelander in the ground. Sue's voice snapped hard. No! The room went still. Even Johnny stopped moving. Butcher stared at her like she'd slapped him. You don't get it, he hissed. Sue stepped closer, calm but unbreakable. I get it, she said. I get that you've been hurt. I get that you've seen terrible things. But we don't kill people because it's easier. We don't become the thing we're fighting. Butcher's jaw worked. He's not a person, Ben growled. He bleeds, don't he? Reed raised a hand, not to silence them, but to slow the crash. We can't decide that right now, he said. Not while people are in danger, and we don't even understand this world's rules. Butcher's eyes stayed locked on Sue. Your rules will get you buried, he said. Sue didn't blink. Then we'll stand taller, she replied. Huey felt something in his chest loosen. He didn't know if Sue's rules would win here, but he knew they were the rules he wanted to live under. Reed's phone buzzed again. Another alert. Government announces emergency superhuman accountability measures. Annie let out a sharp laugh. There it is, she said. They'll dress it up as safety. Reed's fingers tightened around the phone. They're pushing law because fists didn't work, he said. Butcher grunted. Welcome to the machine. A few hours later, Reed watched the safety speech on a small screen, while his hands built a new sensor array. The spokesperson stood at a podium. Flags behind them. Serious voice. Clean promises. We must ensure public protection, the person said. Unregistered superpowered individuals cannot operate without oversight. Reed didn't care about the words. He watched the framing. The cameras were placed to make the speaker look taller. The lighting made the podium shine. The crowd behind the speaker was carefully selected. This was not government. This was theater. He turned the sound down and looked at Sue. They're going to try to box us into a legal corner, he said. Sue's gaze stayed on the screen. We don't belong in their corners, she said. Johnny flopped onto the couch beside Ben, who didn't move an inch to make room. Johnny didn't care. He just sat on rock. So what do we do? Johnny asked. We can't save people and also fight a whole TV station. Reed held up a small device. We can, he said. We just have to do it smarter. Butcher snorted. You're going to outsmart a billion-dollar propaganda machine with a toaster? Reed's eyes didn't leave the device. No, he said. With truth. Butcher stared at him like Reed was naive. Annie stepped forward. "Truth matters," she said. "It's just hard to show it here." Reed nodded once. "Then we create moments they can't edit," he said. "We rescue in ways that expose their lies." Ben grumbled. "We already did that." "And they still called us attackers," Huey whispered. Reed looked at Huey. His voice softened. "Then we need evidence that survives editing," he said. "Documents, data, witnesses, things Vought can't bury if they spread." Butcher's eyes lit with something sharp. "Now you're talking." Sue's gaze narrowed. "And nobody gets used as bait." Butcher didn't answer that. He didn't promise. That scared Huey more than the cameras did. That night, Homelander stood alone in a quiet room high above the city. No cameras, no cheering. Just soft lighting and a wall of screens. Ashley's voice crackled through an earpiece. "The public sentiment is stabilizing," she said quickly. "We're pushing the danger angle. The reward helps, the fear helps." Homelander didn't respond. He watched a clip on repeat. Not the broadcast clip, the raw clip. Sue's shield, layered and perfect, containing his lasers like they were nothing but light trapped in glass. His smile on camera had held, but his eyes on the raw feed, his real eyes, had flickered. Homelander's fingers tightened around the armrest until the leather groaned. He hated that flicker. He hated that it existed at all. "Sir," Ashley said, "we have a statement ready. We can—" "Shut up," Homelander said softly. Ashley stopped breathing for a moment. Homelander rewound the clip again. Again. He wasn't just angry, he was threatened. Not by their strength alone, by what their strength looked like. They looked like heroes. That was dangerous. Heroes made people ask questions. Homelander leaned forward, eyes cold. "They didn't swing," he murmured. "They didn't bite." He smiled slowly, but it wasn't friendly anymore. "So we make them," he said. He tapped his earpiece. "Get me Noir," he said. "And get me someone from legal." Ashley's voice returned, shaky. "Legal?" "I want a plan," Homelander said, voice calm like he was ordering coffee. "A plan that separates them. A plan that makes the public hate them. A plan that makes them crack." He paused, eyes still on Sue's shield. "And find out what the stretchy one is building," Homelander added. "I want him." Across town, in a glass office with a view that cost more than most people's lives, Stan Edgar sat with his hands folded. He watched the same bridge footage without emotion. He didn't flinch when Homelander's lasers fired. He didn't smile when the crowd screamed. He didn't react when Sue blocked it all like a wall of calm. Ashley stood nearby, talking too fast. "We can spin them as terrorists, but the footage of them saving people is difficult. They're disciplined. They're real," Edgar said. Ashley paused. "Sir?" Edgar's gaze remained steady. "They are not ours," he said. "That is the problem." He tapped the screen. "And the woman with the force fields," he added, "is the real threat." Ashley blinked. Homelander is loud," Edgar said. "She is control." He turned his head slightly. "Do we have their identities?" Ashley swallowed. "Not full, but we have faces. We have biometric estimates. We have voice samples. Legal is preparing classifications." Edgar's voice stayed even. "Good," he said. "Classify them as hostile. Force them into hiding. Every day they hide, they look guilty." Ashley nodded quickly. "And if they don't hide, then we stage another crisis," Edgar said. "But not like the bridge." Ashley stiffened. "Sir." "The bridge was sloppy," Edgar finished. "Too much spectacle, too much chance." He leaned back. "We will not beat them in a straightforward fight," he said. "So we will not fight them straightforwardly." Ashley hesitated. "What's the plan?" Edgar's eyes didn't change. "Separate the team," he said. "Take the mind. Break the heart. Force the others to choose between their morals and their survival." He stood. "And locate the anomaly," he added. Ashley's eyes widened. "Anomaly?" Edgar glanced at a private report on his tablet. A quiet file with no Vought branding. A file about strange energy readings at the plaza. A door opened, Edgar said. "I want to know who holds the key." Back in the safe house, Reed's scanner beeped again. The signal spiked. Reed froze. Sue stepped closer. "What is it?" Reed checked the direction. The numbers jumped, then steadied. "It's pulsing," he said. "Like something is pushing from the other side." Johnny's eyes widened. "That's not good." Ben rose to his feet. "Then we shut it," he said. Reed nodded slowly. "I need data," he said. "I need to see the site again. I need to know what Vought did there, what equipment they used." Butcher's face turned into a grin that wasn't humor. "Now you're speaking my language," he said. "We're going to Vought." Sue's voice was immediate. "We're not charging in." Butcher lifted his hands in fake surrender. "Fine," he said. "We sneak in. We take what we need. We leave." Huey swallowed. "And we don't get caught," he said, trying to sound confident. Butcher looked at him. "We will," he said cheerfully. "But we'll make it expensive." Sue's eyes hardened. "No," she said. "We make it safe." Reed looked at his family. They were tired. They were outnumbered. They were in a world that rewarded cruelty. And still, Sue was saying safe. That was their anchor. Reed nodded. "Tonight," he said. The turning point didn't come from a punch. It came from a knock. A sharp knock at the safe house door. Everyone froze. Sue's shield snapped over the door again. Butcher's hand went to his weapon. Reed stretched a thin strip of himself under the door, feeling the hallway. A single person stood outside. Small, light, nervous. Not a tactical team. Reed pulled back. "Who are you?" he called. A voice answered, trembling. "My name is Dr. Klein," the person said. I work for Vought. Please. I don't have much time." Butcher's eyes narrowed. "Trap," he hissed. Annie stepped closer, listening. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe someone's finally scared enough to talk." Sue's voice stayed calm. "Open it," she told Reed. "But keep the shield." Reed did. Dr. Klein stumbled inside. Lab coat, glasses, a face like someone who hadn't slept in days. He looked at Sue and almost cried. "You're real," he whispered. Butcher grabbed him by the collar. "Why are you here?" Klein stammered. "They're going to take you," he said. "They're going to take the stretchy one. They have a facility. They built special containment." Reed felt his blood turn colder. "Where?" he asked. Klein's eyes darted around. "The campus near the plaza," he said. "Underground wing. They're calling it integration." Butcher smiled like Christmas came early. Sue looked at Reed. "They're planning a cage," she said. Reed stared at the pulsing numbers on his scanner. The anomaly was calling. Vought was building tools. Homelander was planning to make them crack. And now, a frightened scientist had walked into their hands, carrying the map to the monster's house. Reed's voice went quiet and firm. "Then we go first," he said. The city looked different at night. Not calmer, just darker. Sue carried them low this time, using rooftops and shadow lines. Her force field bent light around them in small, careful ways. Not a giant bubble. Not a glowing sign. Reed held his scanner like a compass. Every few seconds it chirped softly. Ben moved like a tank trying to be silent, which was almost funny if Huey hadn't been terrified. Johnny flew higher, a small ember against the clouds, keeping his flame dim. He hated dimming himself. He did it anyway. Butcher led from the ground with Annie and Huey and Dr. Klein tucked behind. He had directions, codes, and that look in his eyes that always meant he was willing to do something ugly if it solved the problem. They reached the Vought campus in the early hours, when the streets were quieter and the guards were tired. It was clean. Too clean. Glass walls. White lights. Security gates that looked like they belonged at an airport. A big sign said, Vought Health Initiative. Reed stared at the sign and felt disgust rise in his throat. They call it health, he murmured. Klein whispered, It's not. Reed's scanner spiked. The weak spot was close. Reed pointed. Under there, he said. Klein nodded quickly. Underground wing, he whispered. Elevator access. Butcher pulled a keycard from his pocket. Thank you, Doc, he said. Now stay behind me. Sue didn't like that phrasing. Huey saw it in her eyes. They slipped past the first gate with Klein's codes, and Reed's fingers in the wiring when the codes hesitated. Inside, the hallways were bright and quiet. Too quiet. Reed didn't trust quiet. He stretched an arm down the corridor, feeling vibrations through the floor. 2 guards, he whispered, around the corner. Sue lifted her hand. A thin force field formed, like a clear wall sliding forward. The guards turned the corner and walked straight into it. They didn't hit hard. They just stopped, confused, pressing their hands against invisible glass. Ben stepped up behind them and gently, grabbed each by the back of the collar and lifted them like kids. He set them down behind a storage door and closed it. No screams, no broken bones, just 2 grown men blinking in shock. Huey swallowed. That was nicer than usual, he whispered. Butcher muttered, Don't get used to it. They found the elevator. Klein entered the code with shaking fingers. The door slid open. Inside, the elevator was pristine. A camera in the corner watched. Sue looked up at it. The camera blinked, then went dark as a force field wrapped around it like a blindfold. The elevator descended. As it moved lower, Reed felt it first. A pressure in the air. Like the space itself was tense. His scanner screamed in quiet beeps. We're right above it, Reed whispered. The doors opened into a hallway that didn't look like a hospital wing. It looked like a cage factory. Thick doors, reinforced walls, floor panels with seams that suggested hidden machinery underneath. Red lights at intervals, not for comfort, but for alarms. A sign read, Integration Suite A. Johnny's voice was tight. This is for us. Reed's mouth flattened. For me, he said. They moved. Reed led them past rooms filled with equipment, high-frequency emitters, polymer foam tanks, and metal frames shaped like giant rings. He didn't need to guess what those rings were. Field anchors. Tools designed to interfere with energy patterns. Tools designed to stress Sue's shields. Sue walked slower, eyes scanning. They built this fast, she said. Klein swallowed. They planned it before you arrived, he whispered. They've been waiting for something like you. Reed felt anger now. Not loud anger. Focused anger. They saw a door, Reed murmured, and they decided they would own it. They reached a central lab. It was bigger than the others. Rows of monitors, glass tanks, a table filled with vials labeled with codes. Compound V wasn't just a rumor here. It was inventory. Reed stepped forward, hands moving. He copied files to a drive. He scanned the vials without touching them, using a device he built from a medical scanner and a stolen battery. His eyes widened slightly as data came in. This isn't magic, he whispered. It's biology pushed past its limits. It's unstable. It's reckless. Butcher leaned in, voice eager. Can you make it? Reed looked at him sharply. No, he said. "And I wouldn't." Butcher's smile faded. "You sure?" Sue's voice cut in. "Enough." Reed kept working, faster now. His scanner spiked again, so hard it made his ears ring. The weak spot was not just near, it was here, under the floor. A faint vibration rolled through the room. Ben's head snapped up. "You feel that?" he rumbled. Johnny's flame flickered, reacting to the air changing. "Yeah," he said. "Like..." The room just inhaled. Reed stepped back from the table. "Everyone behind Sue," he said. Sue moved instantly, planting herself between the team and the center of the room. A force field dome formed around them, smooth and strong. The floor seam in the center of the lab split, not like a trapdoor, like a wound opening. A thin line of black light appeared. It shimmered. Wrong and sharp, like the world's edge had been cut. Huey's breath caught. That's the hole." Reed's eyes locked on it. "It's the same signature," he said, "but smaller. Like a crack." The crack widened, and something came out. Not a man, not a monster with teeth. At first it looked like smoke. Then Reed saw it wasn't smoke at all. It was a swarm. Tiny, mirror-dark shapes, like insects made of thin metal and shadow. They moved in a cloud, buzzing without sound. They touched the lab lights, and the lights went out in a popping chain, one after another. The room fell into emergency red. The swarm touched a metal chair, and the chair's legs crumbled, turning brittle and collapsing like dry chalk. Reed's mind raced. "They're eating structure," he whispered. "Breaking bonds." Johnny's voice went tight. "So how do we stop them?" Reed swallowed. "We contain them." The swarm hit Sue's shield. It pressed like a living wave. Sue's face tightened, not with fear, with effort. Her shield held, but Huey could see the pressure building, like a storm pressing on a window. Ben stepped forward. "I'll smash 'em." Reed snapped. "Don't. If you swing, you'll spread them." Butcher raised his gun anyway. "Fine, I'll shoot 'em." Annie grabbed his arm. "Bullets won't help." Butcher jerked away. "Then what does?" Johnny lifted his hands, flame ready, but he hesitated. Fire could burn oxygen. Fire could hurt people. Sue was holding the swarm back, but there were labs around them. Other rooms. Workers sleeping in night shifts. Guards. Innocents. Sue's voice was strained but clear. "Johnny," she said. Controlled heat. High, tight. Away from people. Johnny swallowed. "Got it." He stepped outside Sue's dome for a split second, wrapped himself in flame, and flew up toward the ceiling. He didn't blast a wall of fire. He made a narrow funnel of heat, like a torch flame shaped into a cone. He aimed it at the swarm's edge. The mirror insects reacted. Some curled away, some burned and fell as dark dust. But the swarm didn't die. It shifted. It flowed like it was thinking. It slid along the outside of Sue's shield, searching for a weak seam. Reed's eyes snapped to the floor. He saw the crack still open. He saw the source. "Reed!" Sue snapped, voice sharper. "They're bringing security!" She was right. The alarms had triggered. Footsteps thundered in the hall. Heavy ones. Not guards in thin vests. Something else. A door to the lab slammed open. A squad entered in hard armor carrying strange devices, ring-shaped tools with humming cores, field anchors. Behind them walked a large man with a smug smile, skin pale under red lights. His arms bulged too large, veins too thick, a vaught heavy. He cracked his neck like he was warming up for a sport. "Well," he said, voice low and pleased. "Look what wandered in." Butcher's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" The man smiled wider. "They call me Titan," he said, "and they told me I get a bonus if I bring you back in pieces." Ben stepped forward, shoulders rolling. "Good luck," he rumbled. Titan laughed and charged. Ben met him head-on. The impact shook the room. Ben didn't fly back. Titan didn't either. For a second, Huey saw what this really was. A real fighter built like stone against a lab-made brute built like a product. Ben's fists swung, heavy and controlled. He didn't aim for heads. He aimed for shoulders, ribs, knees. Stop the threat. Don't kill. Titan swung wild, smiling even when Ben's punches landed because he wanted a spectacle. Sue held her shield as the anchor devices spun up. The armored squad raised the ring tools and pointed them at Sue. A low hum filled the lab. Sue's shield shuddered. Not breaking, but stressed. Huey felt it like pressure on his teeth. Sue's face tightened. Sweat formed at her hairline. "They built these for me," she said through clenched teeth. Reed's mind snapped into motion. He wasn't going to outmuscle a cage. He was going to outthink it. "Johnny!" Reed shouted. "Heat the anchors, not the people, the devices." Johnny pivoted midair. His flame narrowed into precise bursts. He aimed at the ring tool's cores. The armored squad shouted and ducked, trying to shield their gear. Sue's shield flickered hard as the hum spiked. Reed stretched across the room, his arms splitting into thin strands like cables. He wrapped those strands around the anchor devices, pulling them off aim, twisting them away from Sue. A guard tried to cut the strands. Reed's body yielded like rubber, making the blade useless. Reed yanked the device out of the guard's hands and slammed it into the wall. It sparked and died. But more were coming. Sue's shield trembled again as two anchors lined up properly. Huey saw Sue's lips press into a hard line. She wasn't afraid. She was angry. And she was choosing control anyway. Annie stepped out from behind Sue for half a second, light building in her hands. She fired a bright blast at the ceiling lights. The lights burst. The room plunged into deeper red darkness. The armored squad cursed. Their aim faltered. Annie's voice was tight. "They can't aim if they can't see." Butcher used the confusion instantly. He moved like a predator, not heroic, but effective. He slammed one guard's head into a console and grabbed the anchor device. Sue's voice snapped. "Butcher, don't—" Butcher snarled. "Shut it!" He pointed the device at Titan and hit the trigger. The hum slammed into Titan's body. Titan staggered mid-swing like he'd been hit by a truck. Ben used the opening. He grabbed Titan's wrist, twisted, and drove Titan down to one knee with brute force. Ben's voice was low and furious. "You hurt people for money." Titan coughed, still smiling, because pain wasn't a lesson for him. It's a living. Ben's fist raised, and Ben stopped himself, because he saw, just past Titan, a lab worker cowering behind a glass tank, eyes wide. Ben's fist lowered. He slammed Titan's shoulder instead, dislocating it with a crack. Titan screamed. Ben stepped back, breathing hard. Reed's eyes flicked to the swarm. The mirror insects were still pressing. They were leaking into vents. If they spread into the building, the whole facility could collapse. People could die. Vought would blame the four. And the swarm might move into the city. Reed's throat tightened. "We need to close the crack," he said. Sue's eyes didn't leave the swarm. "I'm holding it," she said. "You do it." Reed nodded once. He stretched toward the floor seam. His fingers became thin, careful instruments. He didn't touch the crack directly. He set a device near it, one he'd built in the safe house, tuned to the anomaly frequency. He adjusted dials with a speed that looked impossible. The crack shivered. The swarm buzzed harder, like it sensed danger. The pressure on Sue's shield spiked. Sue's breath hitched. Huey felt panic rise. "Sue!" Sue's voice was strained. "I'm fine," she said. lying because she needed everyone calm. Reed pushed the device output higher. The crack began to narrow. The swarm pressed harder, desperate. Johnny flew lower and widened his heat cone, burning the swarm's edge to keep it from slipping around Sue's dome. He gritted his teeth. "This is like trying to burn a storm." Reed's eyes stayed locked. "Keep it tight," he snapped. "Don't let it spread." Annie stepped beside Johnny, her hands glowing, blasting bright flashes to disrupt the swarm's movement and give Sue seconds of relief. The armored squad regrouped. Their leader yelled into a radio. "Containment engaged. Target extraction." Reed didn't let them finish. He stretched across the room, grabbed the radio, and crushed it in his fist. Then he looked at Sue. 30 seconds, he said. Sue's jaw clenched. "Make it 20. Butcher looked around, eyes wild. "We're surrounded," he said. "This is the part where we shoot our way out." Sue snapped. "No." Butcher's face twisted. "Then what? We ask nicely?" Reed's voice cut in, cold and clear. "We leave by making them unable to follow," he said. He slapped a small device onto a power conduit. The device pulsed. Every anchor tool in the room flickered, not exploding, not harming the guards, just shutting down. The hum died. Sue's shield steadied instantly, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Sue exhaled hard. "Thank you." Ben shoved Titan away, leaving him groaning on the floor. "We leaving now?" Ben asked. Reed nodded. "Now." Sue expanded her shield into a moving corridor again, like she had on the bridge, but tighter, faster. It pushed forward through the lab door, clearing a path without crushing anyone. They moved as a unit. Johnny stayed above, laying controlled heat behind them to burn the swarm remnants that tried to chase. Annie stayed near Huey and Klein, blasting light at cameras, bursting lenses so footage wouldn't be clean. Reed held a drive in one hand and his scanner in the other, eyes flicking between both. The crack was shrinking behind them, not fully sealed, but contained. For now. In the hallway, more guards poured in. Some fired rubber rounds, some fired real bullets. Sue's shield absorbed them all like rain. But the hallway was long, and people were everywhere now. Workers, janitors, late-shift staff running in fear. Sue's face tightened again. She wasn't just shielding her team. She was shielding strangers. She kept widening and reshaping her fields, catching ricochets, blocking panicked stampedes, guiding people away from danger. Huey watched her and felt tears sting his eyes. She didn't have to. But she did. Because that was what a hero was. They reached the elevator. It was locked down. Red light blinking. Klein's voice shook. "They locked it from above," Ben grunted. "Then we make a new door." He stepped toward the wall. Reed grabbed his arm. "No," Reed said fast. "If you break the wall, you give the swarm more ways out. We stay contained." Ben froze, frustrated. Reed's mind raced. Then he looked up at the ceiling panel and smiled grimly. "Johnny," Reed said. "Vent shaft." Johnny's eyes widened. "That's tiny." Reed stretched his arm upward into the ceiling seam. "Not for me," he said. Sue's shield formed a tight bubble around them again as Reed worked. He pulled the panel down without noise, twisted his body into a thin shape, and slid up into the vent. He moved fast through metal corridors, feeling the building's vibrations like a living map. He found a maintenance hatch above the elevator shaft. He jammed it open. He dropped a wire line down. "Go," Reed's voice echoed from above. Sue lifted Huey and Klein first, using a small force field platform to raise them. Ben followed, hauling himself up with a grunt that made the vent scream. Johnny flew up last, careful not to melt anything. Butcher went last, looking annoyed that he wasn't first. They emerged into a maintenance hallway on the main floor, away from the lockdown elevator. Alarms still blared below. but above it was quiet. For a moment. Then Reed's stolen phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A live broadcast had started. A news anchor's face filled the screen, smiling like this was a gift. "Breaking news," the anchor said. Vought Health Initiative had suffered a terrorist attack. Sources confirmed the unregistered soups were seen entering the facility. Sue's face hardened. The anchor continued. Vought confirms there was a dangerous incident involving experimental materials. The public is advised to stay indoors. Reed's eyes narrowed. They were already spinning it. Already burying the truth. Already rewriting the night. Huey's voice shook. "They're going to blame you for whatever that swarm was." Reed nodded once. "Yes," he said. "And they're going to pretend it was our fault." Annie's jaw clenched. "We need to get the evidence out," she said. Reed held up the drive. "We have something," he said. Butcher grinned. "And we can get more," he said, eyes gleaming. Sue snapped. "We got what we came for. We leave." Butcher's grin faltered. "We're in the building." Sue stepped closer, her voice dangerously calm. "We leave," she repeated. "Or, I leave you." For a second, Butcher looked like he might argue. Then he saw Sue's eyes. Not angry, certain. He swallowed. "Fine," he muttered. "We leave." They slipped out into the night through a loading exit. The city air hit them like cold water. Helicopters were already shifting direction, moving toward the facility. Reed looked back once. He could feel the weak spot still pulsing, like a crack under tape. Not sealed, not gone, just contained. And now Vought knew for sure. Reed Richards was real, and he was dangerous to their control. In a quiet control room deep inside the facility, a technician watched a screen full of data. Not the news, not the cameras, the sensor logs, Sue's force field frequency, Johnny's heat patterns, Ben's impact readings, Reed's strange biology signatures from the moments his stretched body brushed a scanner. The technician swallowed. A calm voice behind him said, "Send it upstairs." The technician turned. Stan Edgar stood in the doorway, hands folded, expression unreadable. "We have enough," Edgar said quietly. "Now we build the proper response." The technician nodded shakily. "They escaped." Edgar's eyes stayed calm. "For tonight," he said. He looked at the data line labeled Richards. Cell sample trace detected. His mouth did not smile, but his voice held satisfaction. "Now," Edgar said, "we know what to hunt." And high above the city, Homelander watched the live broadcast of the terror attack. He listened to the anchor. He watched the fear spread. He smiled. Not because the story was true, because the story was his. "Run," he murmured. "Hide. Be good." His eyes narrowed, cold and bright. "Let's see how long you stay heroes when the whole world is screaming at you." 2 weeks passed, but the city did not calm down. It got louder. Reed learned the rhythm fast. In the morning, Vought talked about public safety. By noon, there were fresh posters with their faces. By night, there were new rules, new alerts, and new fake sightings. And every day, there was paperwork. Real paperwork, too. Not just headlines. There were legal notices slid under doors. There were cease and desist letters sent to shelters that had fed people the night the bridge went wrong. There were threats to anyone who shared raw footage. There were forms that tried to turn truth into a crime. The safe house changed, too. Butcher didn't like staying in one place when the heat was high. So they moved from the first hideout to another, then another. Finally, they settled in a half-dead warehouse near the river, with a basement that smelled like metal and old rain. It wasn't pretty, but it had thick walls, and the noise of the city covered small sounds. Reed turned the basement into a lab anyway. He worked with what he had: a stolen generator, cheap solder, scrap wire, a chunk of sensor glass Dr. Klein had smuggled out in his sleeve. Reed made it all into something that could listen to the crack in the world. Sue watched him build like she was watching someone stitch a wound. Johnny complained about the smell. Ben complained about the stairs. And the boys complained about everything, because that was how they breathed. Mother's Milk showed up on the third day in that warehouse and took one look at Reed's workbench, which was really a door on 2 paint cans, and said, "No." Then he built Reed a real table out of old pallets and bolts, like it was a rescue mission. Reed didn't know what to do with that kindness. He just nodded and kept building. Frenchie drifted in and out, talking too fast, calling Reed Professor, and offering tools that may or may not have been stolen from a hospital. Kimiko stayed quiet, watching everyone with eyes that missed nothing. Huey tried to keep Dr. Klein from falling apart. Klein was a thin man, with shaky hands, and a face that looked older every day. He slept badly. He jumped at footsteps. He kept saying sorry. Sue kept telling him, "You did the right thing." He never looked convinced. Annie came by when she could. Not always. It was dangerous for her to disappear too long. But when she arrived, the room felt different. Like the air got a little cleaner. She brought news. She brought warnings. Sometimes she brought small wins, like a flash drive from inside Vought, or a list of security rotations. And every time she walked in, Butcher stared at her, like she was both a miracle and a mistake. Reed's days became routine. Morning, check the anomaly readings. Build. Fix. Test. Afternoon, scan the city feeds for staged events. Map patterns. Predict where Vought would need a hero next. Night, work on the seal, because the crack was still there. Contained, yes. Smaller, yes, but not gone. Sometimes, deep in the night, Reed would feel the floor vibrate just a little. The scanner would chirp in a strange rhythm, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to this world. When that happened, Reed's stomach would tighten, and he would work faster. One night, Johnny leaned against the basement doorway, arms crossed, fire dim under his skin like a low pilot light. "You ever sleep?" Johnny asked. Reed didn't look up. "I sleep?" "No, you don't," Johnny said. Reed finally glanced at him. "Do you want the crack sealed or not?" Johnny's expression softened. "I want you not to die," he said. Then he tried to joke, because that was his armor. "Also, I want my hair not to smell like this place forever." Reed almost smiled. Almost. Then the scanner beeped. A sharp, clean ping. Sue, sitting on the stairs above, straightened. "What is it?" Reed checked the readout. His eyes narrowed. "Someone is running a field sweep," he said. Butcher's voice came from upstairs. English. Reed held the scanner higher. "They're searching for the anomaly with tech," he said. "Vought tech." Annie's jaw tightened. "They're looking for the crack," she said. Reed nodded. "And they're getting closer." A heavy silence settled. Because if Vought found the crack first, they wouldn't seal it. They would build a door, and they would own whatever came through. Upstairs, Butcher slammed a new envelope onto the table. "More love letters?" he said. Huey flinched. "Please don't call them that." Butcher flipped the envelope open and tossed papers toward Reed like he was feeding a shredder. "Court summons. Mandatory interview. Emergency compliance." He laughed. "They want you to show up and explain yourselves." Sue didn't touch the papers. "They want us in a room they control," she said. MM read a line and frowned. "This isn't just Vought," he said. "They got government signatures." Butcher leaned back, smug. "Told you. Machine." Reed read the papers anyway, eyes moving fast. At the bottom there was a name, a location, a date. Tomorrow, Reed said quietly. Huey's throat went dry. They want us to go tomorrow? Annie's face went hard. It's a trap, she said. Sue's voice stayed steady. Then we don't go. Reed lowered the papers. If we don't go, he said, they will say we refuse to answer for terror. They'll use it to push harder. More raids. More fear. Butcher's eyes glittered. So we go, he said. Sue turned toward him. No, she said again, sharp as a door slamming. Butcher opened his mouth. Reed cut in. We don't go to their room, he said. We make our own room. Everyone looked at him. Reed pointed at the papers. They want an interview. That means cameras, witnesses, a public angle. They want control of the story. He tapped the scanner. We can use that, he said. We can make a moment they can't edit. Annie's eyes narrowed. How? Reed's voice stayed calm. We bring the evidence, he said. We bring Dr. Klein. We bring the data from the facility, and we stream it ourselves. Huey's stomach dropped. Stream it? Like live? Yes, Reed said. Butcher laughed. You want to fight Vought with Wi-Fi? Reed didn't blink. Yes, he said. And with force fields, fire, and rock if they try to stop us. Sue's gaze locked on Reed. No one dies, she said. Reed nodded. No one dies, he agreed. Butcher's smile faded. Homelander might, he muttered. Sue's eyes flashed. No, she repeated. Butcher's jaw tightened. He looked away, like her certainty made him angry, because he wanted to believe in it. They spent the night preparing. Reed built a small black box the size of a lunch container. It wasn't pretty. It was wires and taped corners. But it had one job: push a live stream through every channel it could touch. Phones, billboards, hacked screens, anything. Frenchie helped, grinning like it was art. Ah, yes, he whispered, tapping a wire. We make the lies cry. checked exits, routes, backups. He was calm, but his eyes stayed alert, like he was counting risks. Kimiko sharpened a blade, then stopped, then set it down, like she was choosing not to be her worst self tonight. Sue practiced shield shapes in the open warehouse space. Not big domes, not brute walls, thin planes, curved funnels, sliding layers. The kind of control that could protect 10 people at once without crushing anyone. Johnny flew circles in the dark, flame tight, learning how to cut drones without throwing heat into a crowd. Ben lifted an engine block like it was a grocery bag and said, "If they bring trucks, I got trucks." Huey sat with Dr. Klein, helping him drink water because his hands shook too hard. Klein whispered, "They'll kill me." Huey swallowed. "They'll try," he said. "But we've got Sue Storm." Klein looked up, eyes wide. "That's her name?" Huey blinked. "Oh, Sue, passing by, heard it anyway." She paused. Her face didn't change, but her eyes softened. "It's okay," Sue said. "Names are not a secret forever." Klein's voice trembled. "They'll know who you are." Sue leaned closer, voice low. "We know who we are," she said. "That's what matters." The next day, they didn't go to the government building. They went to the steps outside it. Public, open, crowded. That was Reed's room. People were already there because Vought had made sure there would be cameras. News vans lined the street. Police barriers cut the sidewalk into lanes. And above, helicopters hovered like metal vultures. Sue stood at the front with Reed beside her. Ben and Johnny flanked them like living warning signs. Annie stood to the side, hood up, trying to stay unseen even as her light threatened to glow. Huey stayed behind the group with Dr. Klein, one hand on the man's arm, ready to steady him. Butcher stood a little back, eyes scanning the rooftops. Reed could feel it before he saw it. Vaught's presence, Not just cameras. People in suits pretending they were not armed. People with earpieces and blank faces. Black noir somewhere nearby, quiet as a knife. Reed's chest tightened, but his voice stayed level. He stepped forward and lifted the small black box. "We are not here to fight," Reed said, loud enough for the nearest microphones to catch. "We are here because people deserve the truth." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Who are you?" Reed didn't answer yet. That was deliberate. If he led with a name, they'd use the name as a brand. He needed them to see actions first. Sue's force field formed a clear canopy above their heads, not to hide, but to block sniper angles and falling drones. It was invisible until bullets tested it, and bullets did test it. A sharp crack echoed. A round struck Sue's shield and flattened into metal dust. The crowd screamed. Sue didn't move. Her shield held. Her voice rose, steady and sharp. "Get back," she called to the civilians. "Move behind the barriers. Stay low." The way she said it made people listen. They moved. Police shouted. Some tried to push the crowd away. Some looked scared, because the shield had just made their world bigger. Reed looked at the nearest news camera. 2 nights ago, he said, Vought claimed a terror attack happened at a health facility. He nodded to Dr. Klein. "This man worked there," Reed said. He brought proof. Klein stepped forward, shaking. Huey held his elbow. Klein swallowed hard. "They built cages," he said, voice thin. "They built tools to trap them. They staged the bridge. His eyes darted. They released dangerous materials and planned to blame them." A shout rose from the crowd. "Liar!" A different shout. "Let him talk!" Reed lifted a hand. "We have data," he said. "Raw, not edited." He clicked the black box. The screens around the street flickered. At first, nothing happened. Then a billboard down the block, meant for a soda ad, went black. A second later, it lit up with security footage. Not from the news, from inside Vought. A clip played of the containment wing, the anchor devices, the words, "Integration Suite." Gasps spread. Another screen flickered on, a bus stop display, and showed a file labeled Bridge Event Timing, Media Prep. A third screen showed an email chain with Vought branding. The crowd made a sound like the world had shifted under their feet. Police turned, confused, looking at their own phone screens as they started to play the same footage. Annie's eyes shone with quiet satisfaction. "Good," she whispered. Then the sky changed. A shadow fell over the steps, and the crowd's noise tightened into fear. Homelander descended slowly, smiling wide. He didn't land like a soldier. He landed like a celebrity. The cameras adored him. "Hello," Homelander said, voice warm and loud. "Everyone, please stay calm." Sue's shield thickened by instinct. Ben's stance widened. Johnny's flame rose a little brighter. Reed didn't move. Homelander's eyes flicked to the screens showing vote files. His smile stayed in place like a mask. "Well," he said lightly, "that's interesting." He turned his head, looking straight at Reed, like he was looking into a mirror he didn't like. "But you're forgetting something," Homelander said. "In this country, we don't listen to terrorists." Reed's voice stayed calm. "We saved people," he said. Homelander's smile sharpened. "So do I," he replied. Then Homelander looked past Reed, right at Dr. Klein. Klein froze. His breath stopped. Homelander's voice dropped, still caught by microphones. "That's a brave man," he said, like praise. "Coming out in public like that." Huey felt cold, because Homelander's praise sounded like a knife being polished. Sue stepped slightly to block Klein from Homelander's direct line. Homelander's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "You don't want to do this," Sue said, voice quiet but firm. Homelander laughed softly. "I do," he said. And then he leaned toward the crowd. "People," Homelander called. "Look at them. They're hacking your screens. They're messing with your phones. Who does that? A hero or a hostile force?" A wave of doubt rippled. Not everyone, but enough. Reed felt the moment wobble. This was the real battle. Not fists, not lasers. Belief. Reed turned and spoke to the crowd again. "You don't have to trust us," he said. "Trust the documents. Trust your own eyes." Homelander's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Documents can be faked," he said. Then he did something worse than lying. He made it personal. He looked down at a woman in the front row holding a child. "Ma'am," Homelander said, sweet as sugar. "Are you scared?" The woman nodded, trembling. Homelander spread his hands like a saint. "I'm scared too," he said. "Because these people showed up out of nowhere, and now they're stirring chaos." He turned his head toward Sue. "You think you can control everything with your little bubbles?" he said, voice soft. "But what happens when you slip?" Sue's jaw tightened. Homelander's eyes flashed red. He didn't aim at Sue. He aimed at the building behind them, at a top corner where the stone could crumble and fall into the crowd. Sue reacted instantly. A shield snapped into place above the corner, catching debris before it could fall. Homelander's lasers followed the edge, trying to force her to spread thinner. Sue did not panic. She split her focus. One shield caught debris. Another shield formed in front of the crowd. A third shield wrapped around Reed and Klein. Her breathing stayed steady, but Huey could see the effort now. Sweat at her temple, a tightness around her eyes. Homelander kept smiling. He wanted her to break. Ben took one step forward. "Pick on someone your own size," he roared. Homelander's head turned slowly. "You are my size," he said, and then he shot forward. Fast, too fast for most eyes. Ben braced anyway. The impact hit like a car crash. Ben slid back 3 feet, boots carving lines in stone steps, but he did not fall. He grabbed Homelander's cape at the collar and yanked, not to choke, to control distance. Homelander's smile vanished for the first time. His eyes went wide, then furious. Johnny streaked upward, flame tight, drawing the helicopter's attention away from the crowd. He flew between them and the steps, forcing them to back off without touching them. Drones dipped toward him. Johnny snapped his fingers and released a thin burst of heat that melted their rotors just enough to make them wobble and fall harmlessly into empty space. "Stop filming kids!" Johnny shouted at nobody and everybody. Reed moved fast, too, in his way. He stretched to the side and slapped a small device onto a streetlight. The device pulsed. More screens in the city lit up. More raw Vought footage spread like fire. If Vought cut one feed, 10 more popped up. MM shouted into a phone, "Now! Share it now!" Huey pulled out his own phone with shaking hands. He hit share again and again. Annie stepped forward, hood falling back now. She lifted her hands, light building. People saw her face and gasped. "Starlight!" someone shouted. Annie's voice rang out. "This is real," she yelled. "Vought lied to you. I've been inside. I've seen what they do." The crowd surged with noise. Some people cheered. Some people screamed at her. Some people just stared, like their brains couldn't hold the new shape of the world. Homelander's eyes flicked to Annie, and something ugly crossed his face. Ben felt it too, because he tightened his grip and growled, "No!" Homelander tried to pull away. Ben held. Homelander's muscles flexed, and Ben's rocky arms strained. They were not equal, not exactly. Homelander had more raw speed, but Ben had weight, leverage, and the stubbornness of a man who refused to move. Reed didn't let the fight become the headline. He stepped up beside Sue and spoke into the microphones again, voice loud and steady, even as the world shook. "My name is Reed Richards," he said. This is Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, Ben Grimm." A wave of gasps rolled. Reed continued. "We are the Fantastic Four," he said. "We don't work for Vought. We won't. We are here because people were in danger." He looked straight at the cameras. "If that makes us enemies," he said, "then this world has forgotten what a hero is." Homelander laughed, sharp and cruel. "Cute speech," he snarled. He jerked hard, ripping his cape free from Ben's grip. He shot upward, hovering above Sue's shields like a hawk above glass. His eyes glowed red again. Sue raised her hands, ready. Homelander aimed down, and then he paused, because Reed's streaming box had done its job too well. The nearest big screen, right behind the steps, flashed a new clip. A Vought meeting room. Stan Edgar, calm as stone, speaking words that made the world go quiet. "We will not fight them straightforwardly," Edgar's recorded voice said. "We separate the team, take the mind, break the heart." A hard silence spread through the crowd. Even police officers stared. Homelander's face twitched. Not fear. Rage. Because that clip wasn't supposed to exist. Because it showed the plan. And it showed that this was never about safety. It was about control. Homelander's smile broke. He fired. Sue's shields caught the lasers again, layered and perfect. But the beams were stronger now, angrier, sloppier. Sue slid her shield sideways, redirecting the heat up into the sky, away from the crowd. She did it like she was moving heavy furniture. Her teeth clenched. Reed saw her strain and made his choice. He stepped toward Homelander, hands up, not in surrender, but in a clear message. "If you want a target, take me." Homelander's eyes locked onto Reed, and in that second, Reed saw it. The need. Homelander didn't just want to win, he wanted to be seen winning. Reed spoke loudly, for cameras and crowd alike. "You want me?" Reed called. "Then take me in front of everyone." Sue's head snapped toward him. "Reed." Reed didn't look away. "He won't," Reed said quietly, just for Sue. "Not like that." Homelander's eyes narrowed, because Reed was right. If Homelander grabbed Reed and flew off, it would look like an abduction, a kidnapping, a crime, a truth Vought couldn't spin cleanly. Homelander hovered, trembling with rage, trapped by his own image. And while he hesitated, Annie fired a bright blast into the air, not at Homelander, but at the cloud line above the steps. The light lit the whole scene. Every camera caught everything. Ben's bruised stone face. Sue's sweating focus. Reed standing unarmed. Homelander hovering like an angry god. No edits, no cuts, just the truth. Live. Butcher chose that moment to do what Butcher always did. He didn't aim at Homelander. He aimed at the support under the stage lighting rigs Vought had placed nearby for the interview. He fired. A rig snapped and swung down, not toward the crowd, but toward Vought's own camera nest. Chaos erupted as operators dove away. Sue threw a shield up to catch the rig anyway, because she wouldn't let anyone die, even liars. But in that burst of confusion, Reed's box sent the Edgar clip to one last place, a giant screen on the side of Vought Tower itself, a clean, bright billboard that normally showed smiling heroes. Now it showed Stan Edgar explaining how to break a family. And across the city, people looked up and saw it. Homelander saw it too. His head turned slowly toward his own tower. For 1 second, his face held something like shock. Then it became something worse. He screamed. Not a word, a raw sound of rage that made people flinch. He blasted the screen with lasers so hard that glass exploded outward. Sue's shield shot up again, catching falling shards before they could rain down on the street. And that was the moment the crowd understood. Homelander wasn't protecting them. They were something he owned. Reed turned to Huey. "Get Klein out," Reed said fast. Huey nodded, already pulling Klein back. and Kimiko moved with him, forming a human wall around the shaking scientist. Frenchie grabbed the streaming box and shouted, "It is done! It is everywhere!" Police lines broke. Not all of them, but some officers stepped back, uncertain. Faces pale. Vought security surged forward, trying to seize devices, trying to grab Klein, trying to stop the spread. Ben stepped in front of them like a mountain. "No," he growled. A truck pushed through the street, trying to ram the steps. Ben grabbed its front bumper and lifted. The truck rose like a toy. The driver screamed. Ben set it down sideways, blocking the street. He didn't crush it. He just made it stop. Johnny dropped low and flared his flame in a tight ring around the steps, not burning anything, just creating heat that made people back off without panic. Sue expanded shields into a moving corridor again. "Move!" she shouted. "Go!" They retreated, not because they had lost, but because staying longer would turn this into a massacre. Homelander hovered above, trembling with fury, eyes glowing. He could chase, he could burn. He could do anything. And he didn't, because he still had an audience. And now, the audience was starting to see him. He watched the four disappear into the streets under Sue's shields and didn't follow. Instead, he turned slowly to face the crowd. He forced his smile back onto his face, like someone pulling on a costume. "Everyone," he said, voice tight, "please remain calm." But his voice shook, and the crowd did not cheer like it used to. That was the real hit. Hours later, the city was chaos. Not fire chaos, information chaos. Phones buzzed nonstop. Clips spread faster than Vought could delete them. People argued in streets, in apartments, on trains. Some called the Four Saviors. Some called them invaders. Some didn't know what to think and felt sick about it. Vought released a statement within an hour, calling the footage deepfake terrorism. But it didn't land clean. Not after people had watched Homelander destroy a screen in rage. Not after people had seen Sue stop glass from killing strangers. Not after people had seen Ben lift a truck and set it down without hurting anyone. In the warehouse basement that night, Reed watched the anomaly scanner. The readings were still there, but softer. Because earlier, before they had gone to the steps, Reed had left one device behind near the crack, a stabilizer, not a full seal, but a clamp. It steadied the pulse like a hand holding a shaking door. Sue walked down the stairs and sat beside him. She looked exhausted. Reed's voice was quiet. "We did what we could," he said. Sue stared at the scanner glow. "We did what we had to," she replied. Upstairs, Butcher paced like a caged animal. Huey heard him mutter. He hesitated. Huey knew who he meant. Homelander. Butcher hated that hesitation, because it meant Homelander still cared about image, which meant he could be controlled. And that meant the war wouldn't end with one punch. Annie arrived late, bruised, breathless, eyes blazing. "You hit them," she said, almost smiling. "You really hit them." nodded once. "Yeah," he said, "but they ain't dead." Annie's smile faded. "No," she said. "They're adapting." Reed looked up. "So are we," he said. He stood and wiped his hands on his jeans. "We have options now," he said. "Not good options, but real ones." Sue's eyes met his. "We stay together," she said. Ben grunted. "We always do." Johnny raised a hand. "Also," he said, trying to lighten it, "can we please not get sued for breathing?" Frenchie laughed. "Too late." "Mon ami," he said. He waved a fresh envelope. "They have sued you for existing." Ben stared at it. "I hate paper." Reed held out his hand. "Give it to me," he said. Johnny blinked. "You're going to read it?" Reed took the envelope, opened it, scanned the pages, and sighed. "Yes," he said. "Because someone has to." Sue leaned her head lightly against Reed's shoulder for a moment. Just a small touch. The family stayed intact. And in this world, that might be the biggest threat of all. The next morning, Ben Grimm sat on the warehouse steps with a cup of coffee he didn't need, holding it anyway because it made him feel normal. Sat beside him, cleaning a small cut on his knuckle like it mattered. Ben watched the street. People walked like they always did. Some carried groceries, some carried bags, some carried tired faces. Life kept moving. Glanced up. "You ever get used to this?" he asked. Ben snorted. "I'm a rock monster," he said. "If I ain't used to weird, I'm doomed." Smirked once. "Fair." A kid across the street pointed at Ben. Not scared. Curious. The kid raised both arms like they were big muscles and made a low grrr sound. Ben blinked. Then, slowly, he raised one rocky arm and flexed gently. The kid squealed with delight and ran off. Ben stared after him, quiet. Watched him. "They saw you last night," said. "They saw you stop that truck, without hurting nobody." Ben's voice was low. "That's the job," he said. Inside, Johnny stood at a cracked window and watched the news play on a loop. They had edited the story again. They always would. But Johnny also saw something new. Clips from normal people's phones. Angles. Vought didn't control. A shaky video of Sue catching falling glass. A clip of Reed's calm voice. A clip of Annie shouting truth. Johnny touched the glass lightly. For once, he didn't want attention. He wanted accuracy. Downstairs, Reed adjusted a dial on his stabilizer system. The anomaly signal was quieter today. Not gone, but quieter. He could feel the door, held shut by force and math. Reed knew he could build a stronger seal if he had a proper lab. He also knew what Vought would offer him next. A lab, a deal, a leash. Sue stepped in and looked at the readout. "Better?" she asked. Reed nodded. "For now," he said. Sue hesitated. "For how long?" Reed didn't pretend. "As long as we keep pressure on it," he said. "And as long as Vought doesn't start digging with bigger tools." Sue's eyes tightened. "Then we stop them from digging." Reed looked at her. "Together," he said. Sue nodded. "Always." Upstairs, Huey sat with Dr. Klein at the kitchen table. Klein's hand still shook, but less. Huey slid a phone toward him. "People are sharing your clip," Huey said. "Some are calling you brave." Klein stared. "I don't feel brave," he whispered. Huey's voice was gentle. "Brave isn't a feeling," he said. "It's a thing you do when you're scared." Klein's eyes filled. He nodded once. Across the room, Annie watched. Quiet. She looked tired. But she looked lighter too, like she'd been carrying a stone in her chest for years, and someone had finally helped her lift it. Butcher stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face dark. Annie met his eyes. "We did something," she said. Butcher's jaw worked. "Yeah," he muttered. "You poked the bear." Annie's voice sharpened. "No," she said. "We showed the world the bear." Butcher looked away. He didn't say sorry. He didn't say thank you. But his hands were shaking slightly. And for Butcher, that was a confession. Later, when the sun dipped and the city lights started to glow, Sue stood on the warehouse roof with Reed. The wind was cold. The skyline was sharp. In the distance, Vought Tower still stood, but one of its giant screens was dark. Reed followed Sue's gaze. "They'll fix it," he said. Sue nodded. "I know." Reed's voice was quiet. "We could leave," he said. "If I push the seal in the other direction, if I risk it, we might reopen the door home." Sue didn't answer right away. She looked down at the streets, at the small, moving lives. Finally, she said, "And what happens to them if we leave?" Reed swallowed. "They keep fighting," he said. "Without us." Sue's eyes stayed on the city. "They fought before us," she said. "But now, they've seen something else." She glanced at Reed. "They've seen a kind of power that chooses restraint," she said. "They've seen a kind of strength that doesn't laugh at fear." Reed's throat tightened. Sue took his hand. Not dramatic, not a speech, just a hand. "We don't belong here," Sue said. "But we're here." Reed nodded slowly. "Then we build a life that makes sense," he said. Sue's mouth curved in a small, tired smile. "Even if it comes with lawsuits," she said. Reed almost laughed. "Especially if it comes with lawsuits," he replied. Below them, a siren wailed. Far away, another answered. The world kept moving, still dangerous, still loud. But different now, because somewhere in that city, people had watched real heroes protect strangers when nobody was clapping, and that kind of truth was hard to erase. Sue looked out at the skyline one last time. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. "Real power isn't the laser," she said. "It's the choice." Reed squeezed her hand, and the wind moved over the roof like a breath as the city lived on under an invisible shield that wasn't owned by anyone.